Thank you so much for that honor. And like anything of that sort, I have to accept honestly because of the people I work with, the family I have, my wife Elaine, great colleagues, great friends, great mentors. And so I humbly accept that honor, or this honor, with that very big caveat. This has already been a really wonderful day for me. David Slavsky, a physicist, when he's not the dean of the School of Education, explained the Big Bang Theory to me as we rounded the corner here, and I turned to him right over here and I said, "Yeah, I get it." And he looked at me and said, "No, you don't." And I said, "Well, something big happened," and he said, "Sort of." And then we came in here. He looked a little aghast. And then to be in the presence of Sister Jean. Now, I understand that, Sister Jean, you are here. I became a fan of Sister Jean first and Loyola basketball second. And she made the local papers in Ohio. It was great, but she made a real fan of me. Let me say a word, too, about the Nancy Tuckman's leadership. The Institute of Environmental Sustainability is an extraordinary place. And Nancy walked us through. Angela, we saw some of your handiwork. It was a great place. And in a world where all the trend lines are going up like this and down like this, what the Institute is doing so well is to show that you can roll up your sleeves and solve problems. You can take science and design and begin to deal with these issues at a scale we understand. And so it gives me real hope to see that institute and the amazing leadership of Nancy and her colleagues in the Institute of Environmental Sustainability. And then the presence, David, your presence here is, in the Department of Education, I think is totally appropriate because the numbers that we face, the issues that we have to deal with are not problems out there. They're problems that start right here. They're how we think and how poorly we think about lots of things that have to do with long-term human survival. So I want to talk about, the point of this talk is to say that sustainability, we've always thought sustainability was something over there that had to do with science and technology and so forth, and indeed it does. But it is first and foremost, I think we're learning in a way we've never learned before now that it's a matter of politics. And I don't mean partisan politics. I don't mean this is left and right. I don't think Americans are as divided left and right as we're told we are. I think some people make a very good living by labeling some people conservatives and some people liberals and get them fighting back and forth. It's a great business plan, and it's worked really well. We have to overcome that. And the issues of sustainability are issues fundamentally of how we conduct the public business publicly for the long term. So you're probably, you are the second generation, I think, to know with considerable scientific certainty that the human experiment could end badly, and it could do so soon. That's not an opinion. That's simply the weight of numbers, year after year, study after study. And you can fill a good-sized library with studies that verify that scientifically. So considering how this might happen, nuclear war, it's probably more likely now than it has been for a long time, according to Daniel Ellsberg, who understands these things. Ecosystem collapse or climate change, or simply eviction by the machines that we're creating that are or will soon be a lot smarter than we are. And so we're carbon-based intelligence, and all of us have stubbed toes and broken hearts and pet dogs and cats and wondered at the stars, but those machines will have had none of that. That is silicon-based intelligence, and we will not understand that in a way that we understand each other, and sometimes that's hard enough. Astronomer Martin Rees at Cambridge University famously estimated the odds of human survival by the year 2100 at something like 50-50. There's a cheery note on your graduation day. And then he said his colleagues in science told him, no, you're way too optimistic. Now, think about this just a little bit, and there are two comments I want to make about that. One is the odds. You wouldn't get into a car if you thought the odds of fatal crash would be 1 in 2 or 1 in 4 or 1 in 10 or even 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000. You wouldn't do it. But the odds of civilization making it another 80-some years into the future, 50-50 or 1 in 4, 1 in 5. And how do we handle that? How do we think about that? And the standard way to think about it is just simply turn it off, dismiss it. So the challenge of sustainability gets trivialized. We reduce it to a few technical things and windmills and things that go around and squiggly light bulbs and so forth. But this is the challenge of your life and of our civilization. So considering how this plays out, how do we think about it? Some people will say, and I've heard this from a number of scientists, it's already too late. The numbers run against us. I don't believe that, and you shouldn't either. Theologian Jack Miles, for example, conjectures that when we finally wake up to realize that it's the end of everything that we valued, it will be our finest hour, not just our final hour, but our finest hour. In the same way that I guess a cancer diagnosis arouses people to summon up the will to live their final days on earth with nobility and do great things. Others believe that we can save ourselves of making a rapid transition to a solar-powered, perhaps geo-engineered world driven by markets and self-interest, with no changes in our manner of politics or governance or behavior, and I disagree. I think that falls in the realm of what theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer said once was cheap grace, the easy way out. You can have your cake and eat it too. But before explaining why, it's important that we understand the forces that brought us to the edge of the abyss. And this is the start of environmental studies. Nobody goes into environmental studies or sustainability studies because they thought it's a really easy, solvable problem. It's just going to be fun and build a few greenhouses and green buildings and it's all over. It isn't that way. You got in because you knew it was serious. And the causes of the predicament are many. The exponential growth of the human population. In the year 1800, there were 1 billion of us on the planet. Now there are about 7.4 billion. I heard last night over dinner that the upper limit by the end of the century will be perhaps 11 billion. So we're still growing at maybe a lower rate. Or you can blame the scale of the global economy that exceeds what the earth can give on a sustained basis long-term for everybody. The careless use of technology, and you can pick your own, but the problem is real. We need to think not as technological fundamentalists, but as people, thinking people, critical people, not dismissing technology, but understanding how and when to use it to best effect. Mounting economic inequality. I am told that something like 8 people on a stage have more net wealth in the United States than the bottom 180 million people in the United States. Worldwide, it's perhaps a bit worse. So looming over all the other crises is this massive dereliction of political leaders at all levels who've remained indifferent to our peril despite repeated and increasingly urgent and authoritative scientific warnings. In 1976, I was part of a small group that gave President-elect Jimmy Carter, a document on energy policy and climate. That document, written in 1976, still reads well. That's not to our credit. So John Platt once called our situation a crisis of crises. There isn't one thing about sustainability. There are lots of different things. And that is to say it's a long-term, complex, systemic crisis, and there is no easy fix, whether economic or technological. But until those systemic errors embedded in the way we think and the way we organize the public business are rectified or resolved, our situation will continue to deteriorate. For this reason, Pope Francis calls for what he referred to as an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the excluded, at the same time protecting nature. He called all of this integral ecology. It was a call to see humanity and nature and future generations as one system, and to put morality and justice, as you heard from the 2 great student comments, at the center of the conversation and at the center of our boundaries of consideration. But the word system, embedded here as integral ecology, is, I think, the most radical word in our language. In its fullest sense, it signifies the obligations and interdependencies that bind us to the past, to the future, to each other, and to the web of life. It means that no one of us, no organization, no college, no university, no corporation, and no nation is an island cut off from the mainland. We are inextricably part of an evolving whole, mere citizens in the community of life, as the great ecologist Aldo Leopold put it. But we're more. We are, as conservative writer and the originator really of what we take to be modern conservatism once said, we're trustees, obligated to honor the legacies handed down from generations who came before us and to protect the rights of those who will follow us. The word system implies a kind of connectedness that runs counter to our tendency to think, in particular an American tendency, to think of ourselves as self-made and self-maximizing individuals free from obligations, from duties, and restraints of any sort. The reality of independence runs counter to the hyper-nationalism and mean-spirited, gun-toting, bumper sticker patriotism now all too common here and elsewhere. Taken seriously, the word system, rendered by Pope Francis as, again, integral ecology, redirects our attention from the self-interest of any one part to the health of the whole. Further, it deepens our understanding of causes and effects. Now listen carefully to this. Further, it deepens our understanding in a way that there are few accidents in this world. Rather, what appear to be accidents or acts of God or anomalies are in fact the remorseless working out of the rules of the system, often of which are hidden from us. For example, a society that measures its progress only by economic growth and rapid technological change will also have sprawling cities, pervasive crime, often starting in the high levels of the economy, high levels of inequality, damaged ecologies, dead zones, species extinction, a destabilizing climate. All those things that bundle into this word called sustainability. Finally, the word system suggests that we pay for sustainability, one way or another, whether we get it or not. Sooner or later, we pay in lost human potentials, social breakdown, disease, suffering, conflict, and economic ruin. That's not the kind of economics we teach often or you hear in evening news. Most important, the word system changes our perspective from I, me, and mine to we, us, and ours. The former is the language of self-maximizing consumers, rational economic man. The latter is the language of citizens speaking for the common good, public morality, and a genuinely inclusive politics that also includes future generations. My point is simply this. Reduced to its essentials, the crisis of sustainability represents a massive failure of our political imagination, our manner of politics, and of our fragmented institutions of governance. If we're to make the long transition to an ecologically durable, fair, and decent future, excuse me, this goal of sustainability, we must learn how to conduct a public business as an integrated system, and that will require repairing and strengthening the institutions of democracy. In our present circumstances, this will be difficult to do, considering the following. Our public discourse, the stuff that we hear in the evening news and on the radio day after day, 24/7, has never been gentle, but of late it's become even more coarse, violent, and mendacious. And in Reverend William Barber's words, even at its best, it is, quote, too puny for the crises we face. We no longer expect much from our elected officials, and they deliver accordingly. Or consider the inequities of wealth that I mentioned. 3 billionaires reported to have more wealth than the bottom 50% of Americans. And remember Justice Brandeis, the great Supreme Court Justice, words. He said that we may have democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. Or consider the 64 million American families that exist on less than a living wage, while 400 families make something like $97,000 per hour. Corrupted by a flood of unaccountable money, voter suppression, and gerrymandered electoral districts, our elections, which is election day across parts of the United States, are often unfair and undemocratic. And then finally, a large and growing chasm separates what a majority of people want, what you and I want, and what we can agree to as liberals and conservatives because it is in the public interest, and it's good for the long-term future. A growing chasm separates what we want and the policies and regulations and laws that we get. What is needed, in Pope Francis' words, is a politics, and I'm quoting here, a politics which is far-sighted and capable of a new, integral, interdisciplinary approach. That is unlikely, he puts it, unless and until citizens control political power. In short, we need a more inclusive politics that reaches across the boundaries of our parties, competing philosophies, ethnicity, gender, religion, and generations. So if we're serious about resolving the lethal challenges posed by a destabilizing climate, species extinction, poverty, and violence, we must reinvent the practice of politics as integral ecology, again, Pope Francis' words, and thereby affirm the great truth that out of our many differences, we are one people. We are a nation dedicated to the proposition of government of the people, and by the people, and for the people. In Michael Sandel's words, the hope of our time rests with those who can summon the conviction and the restraint to make sense of our condition and repair the civic life on which democracy depends. That is the great work of all of us in this room, but specifically for you, the graduates of the class of 2018. I think you and the other graduates of universities and colleges across this country on this day and throughout the month of May will rise to that challenge. Godspeed.